Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about the preservation of human knowledge and, quite frankly, human history. How are we really going to fully preserve this? Now, I think this is really interesting because if you look through essentially all of history, there has been a ton of knowledge that has been lost over time. The library at Alexandria burned, for example, and we lost quite a bit of information. Wars, conquest, ends up in the destruction of essentially artifacts, relics of who we are. And I think this is something that's really important because in the age of internet, in the age of data, where we can essentially consume and store information around the world, regardless of borders, and for the most part, I think this is an important one. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Ashley Bellinger of Ars Technica had a really interesting write-up about what's going on with the Internet Archive, because as a result of book publishers successfully suing the Internet Archive last year, essentially the free online library that strives to keep growing online access to books, but also backing up that which is of the Internet, essentially lost access to about 500,000 books, essentially titles. So Internet Archive reported in a blog post this month that publishers abruptly forcing these takedowns triggered a quote-unquote devastating loss for readers who depend on the archive to access books that are otherwise impossible or very, very difficult to both find and access. Now, in order to restore access, the archive is now appealing, hoping to reverse the prior court's decision by convincing the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Second Circuit that their controlled digital lending of these physical books should be considered fair use under copyright law. Now, an April court filing shows that the Internet Archive intended to argue that the publishers have no evidence that the ebook market has been harmed by the open library's lending, and copyright law is better served by allowing the Internet Archive's lending than by essentially preventing it. Now, Chris Freeland, the Archive's director of library services, writing in a blog said, and I quote, "We use industry standard technology to prevent our books from being downloaded and redistributed, the same technology used by corporate publishers. But the publishers suing our library say we shouldn't be allowed to lend books we own. They have forced us to remove more than 500,000 books from our library, and that's why we're appealing." Now, the archive will have an opportunity to defend its practices when oral arguments start in the appeal process on June 28th. Quote, "Our position is straightforward. We just want to let our library patrons borrow and read the books we own like any other library." Now, they're also arguing that the, quote, "potential repercussions of this lawsuit extend far beyond the Internet Archive, and publishers should just let readers read." Now, I think there's a lot of truth in that, and understanding what a library essentially is. It's a place that is typically run by the local government where you can go and check out books essentially at will. They have a plethora of titles. A lot of libraries may have other things outside of books that you have the ability to rent. But I think the bigger picture here is essentially understanding that we have a complete compendium of human history. And we have an advantage, unlike any previous generation, where we don't necessarily have to have physical paper copies of documents, basically physical footage of events that could end up in a fire, lost, stolen, et cetera, et cetera. We have the ability to essentially digitally store and back up, essentially archive all of human history. Now, I'm less concerned about the stupid TikTok dances that 80 million people are doing, but I am concerned about literature. I am concerned about news sources going away. And as I spoke about a couple of weeks ago or so, in a past segment about how the internet is actually disappearing, that we are down something like 10 to 20%, depending on the standard of websites and access to information. In other words, that website that was built 10 years ago may not simply exist. And Wikipedia has that issue when you're trying to go and look at the actual referenceable news source, where the news source on, NBC, CBS, take your pick on news source, whatever it is simply not there. And so these are things that I think are deeply concerning. And as we are looking at the longevity of humanity, how we look at news and events honestly and accurately, how we have a complete compendium of literature is a huge issue. And in the day and age where, quite frankly, we have libraries and specific types of books that are being published under attack, looking at banning or burning in some cases, this becomes all the more important and all the more relevant. So I'll leave it at that, but I think this is one that we should be discussing at a pretty steady clip. And I don't care what you believe, who you are, or whatever it is, we should be preserving that which is our human history, unique content that has been created that, quite frankly, should be, I think, shared for all. And obviously, when we are talking about 500,000 titles going away, can we ever really get those back? Can we ever really preserve those in a way that, quite frankly, if, humanity is about to blink out, somebody else can read them. Somebody else can understand who we are. And I think it's an important one. So I'll leave it at that, and you tell me what you think. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.